Today we're going to look at YouTube channels for learning Russian, and at the end we'll look at how to fit these resources into a method and routine that will help you on your way to learning the language. If you want to skip ahead, you can follow the timestamps on screen now or in the description below. The YouTube channels we're going to be looking at are specifically about learning Russian. They're therefore great for actively learning the language and noting down new phrases, checking grammar points, that sort of thing. But you can obviously use them for immersion as well, as they are often spoken in the language. We'll look at Russian YouTube channels purely for immersion in future videos. These will be divided into various topics so that you can find channels for areas that interest you, and the links will be in the description below. The channels we're going to look at today aren't listed in any particular order. They're all really good resources created by fantastic teachers and creators. As ever, this isn't an exhaustive list. There'll be other great channels out there, or there certainly will be as time passes after making this video. I'll be sure to add any new channels I come across to the description below. You'll also be able to find them in the corresponding article on the How to Learn Languages website, the link to which will also be in the description below. If there's any channels you know of that haven't been covered in this video, please feel free to mention them in the comments, so that other people can find them too. The first channel we're going to look at is About Russian in Russian. The videos of channels about learning Russian are sometimes spoken in English, but About Russian in Russian is all in Russian. The advantage of this is that you can practice listening to Russian whilst you learn about the language. But don't worry if you're not yet at the stage where you can understand a reasonable amount of what's being said, as you can always use the other channels mentioned until you're feeling more confident. It's also worth trying anyway, as it will be a useful way of gauging your progress, and therefore may help with motivation. You might be pleasantly surprised to find you can understand more of a video than you thought you would, and just remember, you don't need to understand absolutely everything. The exercise of listening to one of the videos, even if you only understand a small amount, is still great Russian listening practice. The next channel we're going to look at is Russian with Max. There's loads of great videos covering a wide range of topics. There's videos on grammar and expressions, but there's also loads of useful videos for learning more about Russia and for practicing your Russian listening in the process. For example, there's a Walk and Learn Russian playlist, as well as a playlist dedicated to conversations and dialogues. The third channel we're going to look at is Russian with Dasha. There's plenty of useful videos on grammar and the foundations of the language, but there's also an array of great videos covering Russia itself. There's extensive playlists for practicing your listening and learning about Russian cities and culture, and there's even a Russia travel guide playlist covering interesting places and travel advice. It's therefore a great channel to learn more about Russia whilst practicing your Russian listening. Russian with Dasha also has a podcast, and the link for that will be in the description as well. It's another great resource, especially if you're on the go. Not every channel will have a podcast, but it's worth checking with each of them to see if they do, as it can be a convenient way to listen to their content during the commute or whilst doing exercise. Another great channel is Tatiana Klimova Russian Podcast. There's loads of great videos covering all sorts of topics. It's a great channel for immersing in Russian, although some of the videos are spoken at a slower pace, so do be sure to still spend some time immersing in videos spoken at a normal speed as well. That being said, the slower pace of the language spoken in some of the videos on this channel is a nice way to build your confidence listening to Russian. These videos cover a wide range of topics, and they're also just a great way to learn more about Russia. The channel also has a podcast called Russian Podcast, and it's a great way to immerse in Russian whilst you're on the go. The next channel we're going to look at is Easy Russian. If you're familiar with Easy Languages channels for other languages, then you can expect a similar experience with Easy Russian. Their videos focus on conversations or interviews with Russian speakers, and this provides an interesting way to practice your Russian listening whilst learning more about Russian culture. There's also subtitles in both English and Russian, providing a helpful reference for both the meaning of phrases and their pronunciation, as you can read the Russian subtitles whilst listening to how they're spoken in the video. The next channel is Ruland Club. There's all sorts of videos about the Russian language, including grammar, expressions and literature. There's also plenty of videos covering vlogs and travel. Another great channel is Amazing Russian. There's loads of great videos on a wide range of topics, including grammar, but plenty of other areas as well, and there's even a playlist dedicated to Russian cartoons. The next channel is Boost Your Russian. Although there's videos on grammar and expressions, a particular focus of the channel is improving your Russian through various forms of media. For example, there's playlists dedicated to learning Russian through stories, music, TV, films, speeches and the news. Another great channel is Russian Level 1. It's ideal for finding useful new phrases and expressions, but also has playlists for listening, reading and even speaking practice. The next three channels we're going to look at are Cafe Russian, Russian with Anastasia, and Russian with Nastya. Each of them has lots of great videos covering a wide range of topics, including grammar, expressions, vlogs, culture, and interviews. The next two channels we'll focus on have been put together as they're similar in scale, and are probably the most well-known channels. These are Real Russian Club and Be Fluent in Russian. There's all sorts of videos relating to Russian language and culture, and whatever area you're looking for, be it grammar, expressions, culture or vlogs, you'll be able to find it on these channels. The next 9 channels are relatively new in comparison to most of the other ones mentioned so far. They therefore don't have as many videos as some of the other channels, but what they have posted is very useful for anyone learning Russian, and it seems like there'll be plenty more to come. So definitely consider subscribing to their channels and supporting their work. These channels are Lena's Lessons, Sound Like a Russian, Russian with Sasha, Unirus Russian, Russian with Yulia, In Russian from Afar, Natalia Practical Russian, Hack Your Russian, and Maria Petrova. They cover a wide range of topics, including grammar, expressions, vlogs, and even general advice on learning Russian. Another great channel is College Russian. There's loads of great videos on a wide range of topics, but especially on the Russian language itself, such as its history and some of its interesting features. The last channel we'll focus on is Russian Grammar. If you prefer to study grammar in isolation, then it's a great channel to learn more about Russian grammar, as their videos have very clear but detailed explanations. Even if you prefer taking a more passive approach to grammar, you may still find their videos helpful as a way of familiarising yourself with some of the key features of Russian grammar. Although we won't be looking at them in the same detail, the following channels are all great channels that are well worth trying. These are Learn Russian with Alfia, Russian from the Heart, Russian from Russia, LearnRussian.org, Learn Russian with Denise Fedorov, Natasha Speaks Russian, Russian in 7 Minutes with Nova Mova, Russian Comprehensive, Help My Russian, Elena Young, Learn to Love Russia, Russian to Russian, and World with Natalie. As a side note, it's worth mentioning that the videos of all of these channels usually aren't spoken at full speed, which is absolutely fine. It helps, particularly when you're a beginner and you're going to these channels to learn specific things, such as to learn some new phrases or check on a certain grammar point. But because it isn't spoken at full speed, do just be sure to immerse in other materials such as films, podcasts, and even other YouTube channels where the language is spoken at a normal speed. This way, you won't get a shock if, later on, you suddenly start listening to the language as it's spoken normally, as your ears will already be adjusted to it. But even with that being said, these are still perfect channels for learning new things and getting some sort of immersion in at the same time. And there are still videos spoken at a fairly normal pace anyway. They're worth using at any stage during the process, and of course they're going to be particularly helpful for beginners. But given how varied the topics are on these channels, you'll find there's new videos all the time on interesting topics relating to the Russian language. Although it's ideal to immerse in the language without English subtitles, the option of English subtitles is not being discouraged for these channels, because their videos aren't solely for immersion. They're an excellent compromise if, during the early stages, you're wanting to immerse in materials where you can understand a lot of what's going on, but they are also just a great way to actively study the language and pick up new phrases. And just as a final reminder, do be sure to still spend some time immersing with videos at normal speed and without subtitles, as this is the most accurate reflection of the language you'll encounter in daily life when speaking with Russian speakers, and it's just very important for the learning process in general. The more we listen to a language, the more our brain becomes familiar with the sound patterns of that language. Researchers have learnt that this trait is with us within a few days of being born. They found that babies who were 2 days old could tell they were listening to 2 separate languages, based on their brain's reactions to the sound patterns they were hearing. And so, in other words, our brains are incredible at recognising sound patterns, and that's why it's vital to keep immersing in the language, even when it feels frustrating, and you don't necessarily feel like you're making improvements. In the background, your brain is getting better and better at recognising the sound patterns of the language. And that's why we have these, what feel like sudden breakthrough moments every now and again, when in reality, it's more of a cumulative process, where all the immersion we were doing has built up and we're getting very comfortable at recognising certain patterns of sound in the language. All the channels mentioned in this video are great channels that are well worth your time. And remember that you don't need to stick to just one. You could easily use all of them, you can mix and match, and in terms of improving your listening comprehension, it serves your Russian well to have various different sources, because obviously no one speaks exactly the same, so having that variety can only help. Any channels that haven't been mentioned haven't been left out intentionally. I'll do my best to add links to any others to the description of this video, as and when I come across them, as there'll no doubt be others out there, be it now or certainly at some point in the future. And if there's any channels you know that haven't been covered in this video, please feel free to mention them in the comments, so that other people can find them too. In terms of fitting the resources we've covered today into a plan for learning Russian, there are 3 essential things you need to learn any language. These 3 things could be called different names based on personal preference, but they boil down to the same things. These are the passive part of the process, the active part, and practice. The passive part of the process is perhaps the most important, in the sense that it's most likely to have been the missing ingredient, as when we learn languages at school, it's impossible to spend much time listening to the language in its normal form, at normal speed, and how it's used in daily life. And this is why, even though we perhaps learn how to conjugate some verbs and say a few sentences, when we actually hear the language properly, in normal settings, we struggle to understand it. The active part is probably going to be the most familiar, in the sense that it does involve active study, but it doesn't have to be in the more traditional ways you may be used to from school. By all means, study grammar in isolation and verb tables if you enjoy that, as enjoyment is the most important thing, but you don't have to. The active part of the process for many people can just be a case of looking for new phrases and learning them, remembering them. With Russian, the active part of the process does involve one addition, and that's learning the alphabet. Practice is just about having conversations, whether they're typed or spoken, with native speakers of that language, or people who speak that language to the level of the first language. Ideally, anyway. Now, if at the start you're a bit tentative and want to develop your Russian a bit more before having conversations, that's absolutely fine. You can just pose questions to yourself and think of how you'd respond and practice answering them. May sound a bit odd at first, but it's absolutely fine, and it is an effective way to improve. The most effective way for improving your fluency is to practice with other people, as it's the most immediate form and it'll make your responses feel more automatic in future. But for many people, it can seem a bit daunting to start that straight away. Some people do advocate starting that straight away, but you don't have to. It's just personal preference. Now, with regard to the resources we looked at today, they're great for the active part of the process. You can learn loads of new phrases, and they're even a fun alternative if you want to check a grammar point to looking it up in a textbook, and of course, a much more cost-effective method for doing that. And of course, they are also helpful for immersion, but they shouldn't be your sole form of immersion, as they are often spoken a bit more slowly than the language normally would be. Over the coming weeks and months, there'll be more videos like this posted on this channel to help you learn Russian, as well as various other languages. If you'd like to look at some other free resources on the website, there's a resources section, and that gets added to weekly. There's general advice on language learning, and there's a tab specifically for Russian resources, focusing particularly on films you can watch to help improve your Russian. And each of these has links to relevant videos and articles that'll add context to the film you've watched. And adding this context helps you to remember the phrases you've come across, and it can just make the whole process more interesting and enjoyable. If you'd like more detail on how to learn Russian, there's a How to Learn Languages guide, How to Learn Russian. The guide goes into lots more detail, and it's a way for you to have everything you need in one place, with links to useful free resources and a plan laid out for you. There's also a detailed section on the history of the Russian language. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and see you next time.